what I really need you to do, and I want you to keep this in mind with love and respect. I need you to sometimes just stop, take a minute, pause, look around, think, and then I need you to come right by here and suck my...
What is up, guys? Welcome back to the SmeshCast. It is Smesh Sunday. We are fresh off the fights. Glover Texiera defeating Thiago Santos by third round submission in a crazy back and forth fight. Thiago looked to almost knock Glover out in the first round. He knocked him down. Glover got the legs, got him down, dominated the rest of the round, dominated the second round, and again in the third round, Thiago almost finished the fight. I thought it was over, but he went down to try to finish Glover on the ground instead of staying on the feet. Glover repositioned, got himself on top, and very quickly got the back and ended the fight. What a fight, Glover and Thiago.
Unreal. I feel like you don't often see a lot of the time, like, you know, you see a lot of people panic wrestle when they get really hurt and really rocked by shots, but usually that's like a sign of the beginning of the end. But with Big Tex over there, holy fuck. He just, like, I thought he was done. I thought it was like, all right, show's over. Which time?
First or third round?
First. I thought it was done. I was like, get the old man out of there. This is just a formality. We all knew that Thiago is the one who needs to challenge this belt next. But wow, I've never seen such successful panic wrestling. Okay.
I don't think it's panic wrestling.
I mean, I think to an extent it is. He was fucking rocked. He was hurt.
I think his game plan is as soon as there's any sort of movement, as soon as there's any sort of scramble, as soon as he sees any opportunity, just go for the legs. So it's panic wrestling in the sense that, oh yeah, he just got hit and he's going for the takedown. But I think that's part of his game plan. I think it's just like, it's not to get hit, obviously, but if you get hit, no matter whatever's happening, if there's some sort of weird positioning, go for the takedown. And the Weasel brought something up. He says, as Israel Adesanya says, I don't swing and pray. I aim and fire. Mm-hmm. Thiago was swinging and praying a couple times where Glover was actually falling in that first round. When Glover was falling, Thiago swung at air 2 or 3 times. Mm-hmm. And because he swung at air, instead of kind of taking it slow, moving his feet, getting positioning, he got taken down.
Mm-hmm. It's, God, if you told me a couple of months ago that Santos would lose this fight and that Reyes would lose his fight and that we'd have this situation where Jan Blachowicz is champion with Glover being the challenger and then Israel Adesanya throwing, I straight up wouldn't believe you. I straight up would not believe you.
Crazy sequence in the light heavyweight division.
Like, you can't plan this shit. This is just like the kind of flash in the pan stuff that fighting is made of. Just like anything can fucking happen in there.
And that brings up a good point.
What's going on with light heavyweight?
Absolutely. And I think something that just came to mind. Everyone always talks about when a big champion who has a belt and is dominant for a long time doesn't get beat, but gives up the belt for whatever reason it is anyway, whether it's retirement, whether it's being stripped because of a John Jones incident, whether it's John moving to heavyweight and just giving it up, no matter what it is, usually that division suffers, right? We saw that happen when GSP gave up that belt in the middleweight division. It took until Israel Adesanya came around to really stabilize that division again.
Sorry. You said, George St. Pierre middleweight.
Yeah,
I misunderstood.
When GSP beat Bisping and then left the belt,
right.
that fucked the whole division up for 2 years. We had a Rockhold weirdness. We had we had the not Weidman. We had the Romero stuff we had Whitaker. It was just a whole mess. Mm-hmm. But light heavyweight, even though it is a bit of a mess still, it is so interesting. It's so compelling. John Jones giving his belt up might be the best thing that's ever happened to light heavyweight.
Mm-hmm. I think that what we saw is in terms of like his high level fight IQ, you know, maybe there was a lot of rounds where Jones was losing his most recent fights and arguably, you know, did lose those fights. But I mean, you can't deny that, like, when it came time for, say, the championship rounds, we got to see like just how, you know, ready Jones was, just how prepared he was at this point in his career. Everybody at like that very high, like top 5 level of the division right now, I think they were all very close to Jones. Jones just has a certain X factor going for him, whether that's experience or performance enhancers or just being goddamn better than everyone else just through his mentality. I don't know, but he clearly had that X factor. So now what I think we have without him is a whole bunch of guys that have very extremely high level skill sets, very close to Jones level skill sets, the kinds that we have not seen in years of Jones dominance. And they're all fighting each other now instead of all fighting Jones. I love it. It makes things there's so many compelling fights. I mean, what we saw last night was just absolute skill, just using your skill and ability to dominate what looks like a sinking ship.
Yeah, and what I find is actually kind of interesting. I mean, Jones, what everyone talks about, he isn't the offensive guy he used to be, but his defense is just insane. No one's defense in MMA is anywhere near John Jones's. But in general, it looks like the rest of the light heavyweight division doesn't have great defense. When you look at the Glover against Santos fight, why was it so back and forth? Because as soon as someone used their offense, the other guy couldn't defend it. Santos would attack with his hands. Glover couldn't defend it, got hit, got lit up. Glover would counter with his wrestling. Santos couldn't defend it, would get lit up on the ground. So there's just no defense. Whereas with Jones, there wasn't as much offense. And so he wouldn't punish these guys like they are punishing each other for when they make these mistakes. But he's also not getting hit too much himself. It's a lot more exciting when you see guys with only offense and not limited defense. And that's why it goes so back and forth. It's going to be really exciting. It's really hard to know if one of them would beat John. I think eventually one of them would. The gap is very clearly closing between John and everybody else.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think he got out at the right time.
John sees that as well. I think that there's no way that he would have vacated if he had won his last two fights at light heavyweight dominantly. I don't see him vacating at that point. I think his plan was always to, because I think that no matter what, I mean, he has a huge ego, but he is, someone who's highly self-aware. And I think who you need that high level ego that he has to get into that level, but you also need a certain degree of self-awareness and knowing your limits. And I think that the plan for Jones was probably always to fight at light heavyweight until things started to get hairy and then move up to heavyweight. And you've got a perfect legacy now at light heavyweight. I think it's a very calculated move from Jones.
And if he goes to heavyweight, he still has the speed advantage. Absolutely. He still has that length, maybe not quite to the same extent, but he still knows how to use it. But and the guys he's fighting are very often not quite as skilled as the guys at light heavyweight. Yeah. And so he's able to potentially compete. If something happens, if he gets knocked out, he still has that excuse. Well, look, I went to heavyweight. I've been going at this for a decade. You can expect eventually I'm going to lose. And then if he goes back to light heavyweight, he might still be able to dominate. And if he doesn't, he always has that, well, I'm older now. I got knocked out. I'm just not the same. I can retire, whatever. He has his legacy locked down. And only now that it started getting hairy, it's kind of like with GSP. Once he started having those fights right at the end of the career, when it started to look like he might have lost. That's when he's like, all right, I'm out. And then he came back a few years later with Bisping.
Yep. And you know what adds to your point is GSP's continued insistence that he will pretty much only fight if he is sure that he will win. So, I mean, it's got to be, that's the kind of mentality that I'm sure all that Jones shares as well. He's only going to fight if he's certain he can win. And that's why I think he's not fighting at light heavyweight. But I think we've gotten away from. It always comes back to Jones. He finds a way to claw his way into every conversation. Always.
I have some interesting points I had noticed when I'd watched this fight. Something I noticed that Teixiera is really, really good at, because Santos doesn't have no takedown defense, and the guy with leg kicks and with the guy with kicks as powerful and as quick as those has to have really, really strong hips, which are really good for takedown defense. So, but it didn't seem to bother Glover. Glover was able to go right through it. He clearly has very, very elite takedown abilities. People don't usually have that ability that easily. He was able to do the same thing to Anthony Smith, right? Take him down whenever he needed to and grind him on the ground. That was A. And he has amazing control on the ground such that it's really, really, really hard to get up when he's on top of you. But B, when he does take you down, he doesn't just do a takedown traditionally where the goal is to get you to the ground. He does it in a way where he ends up in a very advantageous position when he's on the ground. He doesn't take guys down. I don't know if you noticed. I don't think he once, maybe it did happen once, but almost never did he take Santos down and end up in Santos's guard. That didn't happen. When he took Santos down
in the third round, we saw Santos kind of close up his guard a little bit more.
In the third round,
he was very not defensively
he reclaimed guard
on the ground.
No, but he reclaimed guard. But when Glover took him down, every single time he took him down right into side control. And a couple times, in that one time when he picked him up and threw him, he slammed him down and immediately jumped right over to mount. So he's skipping all that work from having to go from guard, break that guard. Maybe he'll do a closed guard where he can just waste time. No. Go straight to half guard or to side control or to mount, where the guy has to work his way out. And Glover is starting from step 3 or 4. He's not starting from step 1 on the ground.
It's really indicative of that extremely high level of training that he's clearly doing. And I think though at the same time, I didn't see Santos being very competitive defensively on the ground. I think it was It was Trevor Whitman was commentating last night. I think he made the comment that we were seeing a lot of Santos using his his arms and his upper body to try and escape his bottom position, but he was not using his feet and his legs and his hips nearly enough. Do you think that? I mean, to me, that points that his recovery for his many leg injuries was not complete. I don't think that he was ready to be in there just yet. Yeah,
so I think it goes a little bit both ways. They mentioned that, but one of the things they mentioned in that same kind of conversation that they were having was that it's not necessarily that he didn't recover fully. It's just that you need to wait the longest to start using your legs in jiu-jitsu. And so maybe he's now fully recovered, but it's just that's the thing he's been training the least. Because that's the thing he had to wait the longest in order to start training after his surgery. And so he just hasn't had as much practice as he needs. He might be fully recovered now, but it just took him longer until he was able to work that ground stuff. Additionally, on that point, when Glover was able to start moving into side control and moving into close to crucifix position, at that point, he made it such that Santos couldn't use his legs, right? When you're you have your whole body, your arms, your legs, your trunk against the other guy's only his arms. And you have gravity on your side. So at that point, Santos couldn't even use his legs. There's nothing he could have done. And when you're fighting with only your upper body, that's so exhausting. And that's why we saw eventually when Glover did get that second rear naked choke in that third round, Santos didn't take much to tap because he was just so exhausted. He was already out of breath.
Yeah, he was done for. But also just ignoring the high level jiu-jitsu we saw, man, that ground and pound, that was devastating. Those were hard shots. I frequently wonder why like a ground and pound based game isn't like the most dominant, like you can, and we see it with like Khabib's style. With him, he was able to be the most dominant, arguably fighter, arguably of all time. But I don't know why more people aren't taking advantage of just like get someone on the ground, beat the fucking shit out of them.
Because you can't just control people. Shots. A few reasons. You can't just control people. It's not easy to do. Most people do not have the takedown ability these guys have. I think one of the good examples of someone like that is a Curtis Blades. That's what he does. And he's only now started to pick that up, but you see he gasses out. Right? He only do it for about 3 rounds. You cannot wrestle for 5 rounds. It's just not possible. Even Khabib often takes that 3rd round off. You saw it in the Conor fight. He stood up for. You just can't go 25 minutes straight grappling. It doesn't work. The human body is not designed for that. And if the guy has the ability to stuff your takedowns, you have no backup. If the guy has a really good jiu-jitsu game, that becomes dangerous. If the guy is able to scramble out, now you've wasted all this energy getting him down, and now he's right back up on his feet. It's just not necessarily the most consistent game unless you can go to the level of Khabib where you truly master every single step of the grappling. And I'll remind you, when Khabib first entered the UFC, he wasn't even that guy yet. Khabib has developed incredibly well. People bring up the Gleason Tebow fight. That's a fucking stupid thing to bring up. That was years ago. And the Khabib that we saw in the octagon against Tebow is not the same Khabib that is fighting against Conor, against Dustin, against Gaethje.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just like you need such a ridiculous level of grappling to make that sustainable, and it's just almost impossible to have, with Khabib being the exception to that, but he's the ultimate exception. Yeah, I do want to talk about the light heavyweight division and the belt before we move on from here. We had, of course, Glover, who's now on a 5-fight winning streak. He's now beaten Anthony Smith and Thiago Santos, 2 title contenders in his last 2 fights. He's on a huge roll, and he called out Jan after the fight. He said, "This is bullshit that Izzy is getting the title shot. Give me the title shot. I deserve it." And Dana White said, you know what? He made some good points, and he's taking him seriously. He'll never doubt Glover again. Mm-hmm. I'd be really curious what should happen, because realistically, Glover should get the shot, but you promised it to
what
Izzy.
Should happen is a very easy answer.
No, but what do you do if you're the UFC right now?
In terms of viewership, obviously any fight with Israel Adesanya attached is going to be a bigger draw. Mm-hmm. And ultimately they are, balancing what's going to be the biggest draw with what's a move that doesn't, like, how can we make this not look like complete fucking bullshit for our fighters and for like our more hardcore fans. At the end of the day, I think that Izzy Jan fight is what's happening. I'm not sure if contracts have been signed for that one yet.
Not yet. There's still Izzy's trying to make it go earlier.
There is still a chance that things could move around, but I mean, what do you want me to say? That I don't think Glover is he's old, which is one thing. He may not have too many good years in him. He's looked absolutely sensational. Fought, he convincingly beat the guy that I was like convinced should hold the belt right now. So what does that say? I think that it's been just such a weird kind of year with the light heavyweight division in just terms of the movement. I don't know. I'd like to see a little stability before this Israel fight. I'd like to see them like actually, have a division that works like a regular division. Now that Jones is out, people fight for the belt who fight within that division and earn their spot. That's not to say that Izzy hasn't earned a spot as like a multi-division champ. He has, but
light heavyweight division is not ready for it yet.
Yes, and I think that the variable that for me that really comes in a lot is this is one of the older guys. I think you got to give him his shot and let him finish his career on a fucking bang.
Yeah,
I do want to say though, maybe before we get into it, because I do want to hear your opinion on this. I don't see Glover doing well against Jan. Straight up, I do not.
Okay, so let's have that conversation afterwards. I think it's a separate conversation to have versus what should we do first. Because I think the real problem I think right now is that, of course, there's a couple problems. Like Glover, as you mentioned, is an old guy, and every minute he has to wait, every day is another day that he gets older, and he's not getting any better. He's not getting any fresher, and he's going to suffer if he has to wait another year. Now, let's say
like an injury at the gym could cause serious repercussions.
Exactly. So you see this guy, you see Israel Adesanya, who has been promised this belt, but if he goes and he fights this fight and he wins this fight, well, what do we expect to happen? I don't see his next fight being a defense against Glover Texiera. I just don't. It's going to be a John Jones fight. Maybe he'll go down to 185 again. He's not going to immediately turn around in a month and a half and defend against Glover Texiera. It makes no sense for him. So how do you balance this? Because if you give Izzy the title shot, if Izzy wins, Glover's not getting back in there for months and months. There's going to be a hold on that light heavyweight belt while Izzy goes and does his thing, or Johns will slide in there. It'll be a solid 6 to 8 months easily after the March fight. So it'll be at least a year until Glover gets his title shot. And if Jan wins, you can go and maybe they make that fight. Maybe even John Jones comes back down to fight Jan. Who knows? Mm-hmm. Glover's in a really, really tough spot because if he does not get the immediate title shot right now. Mm-hmm. Now, in regards to what we should do, though, I don't know. If you're the UFC, you're in a, yeah. I don't know what you do. I think you're in a tough spot because you promised Izzy the belt. I think the right move to do would be to do a quick Glover Jan fight, but I don't think they even have the time for that because Jan doesn't want to fight till March. So you can't do this quick. It's either Izzy doesn't go for light heavyweight and just defends again at middleweight and then goes and fights Jones at heavyweight or somewhere else in the summer, or you just let it go. If you want to talk who would win the fight against Jan, I could see Glover actually putting up a fight against Jan. He has really good takedown ability. Jan has progressed a ton since the first Corey Anderson fight.
Jan also has very high level Brazilian jiu-jitsu.
Yes, but I don't know if he has defensive. Like I don't know if he has BJJ off his back. He has BJJ on top. He's good with his submissions on top. I don't know if he's a guard player per se. And so I think he also has a history of being manhandled on the ground against Corey Anderson that first time, where it was I think it was like a 30-25 kind of fight. Like there were 2 or 3 10-8 rounds in that fight. Right. And so I can see that same thing happening. However, he might have progressed. That never happened in the second Corey Anderson fight, but he also never went for the takedown. He knocked him out first. Right. So we just don't know.
Well, and that's also the thing, though, that we're looking at. Jan can knock out young, fresh fighters. Glover almost got knocked. He arguably may have been out from those. Like, he was fucked. Like, I think that for the most part, anyone watching our show has watched these fights. But if you did not watch these fights, he was fucked. He was like rocked hard very quickly from like the first couple of shots. And Jan has some fuck you power. He has great precision. And he throws, he doesn't throw like you said with Santos, like he threw some mad flurry shots that missed and expended energy and left him open for a takedown. But Jan is a lot more like, I think when Jan throws his shots, he throws fewer, but they land. And they land hard as a fucking truck.
Well, so did Santos's though.
Yeah, they did. But so I guess it's a matter of who do you think maybe holds more power. But I think that you have to also keep in mind that Glover will be coming into the next, if he's getting that title shot right away, he's coming in with that damage that he just took.
That's true. That's
which is a serious
Well,
component.
March. It won't be till March, but still.
Yeah, it's still like for a man his age. I mean, a man that age should not be taking punches, period. And those kind of shots, I don't think that those kinds of shots would have knocked out or significantly rocked like a younger fighter right away. I think that it would have taken more time for that damage to accumulate. I think that there is potential, if Glover's not careful, for it to be a very quick, swift knockout and an end to his career. So I don't think that he beats Jan unless he can very quickly be completely dominant on the ground and maybe capture a finish, like get a choke pretty early on, hit him with that ground and pound. It's going to be whoever can impose their will the hardest. And I think that Jan is fucking hungry right now.
Yeah, I think it's a compelling fight. It just doesn't draw the fans. And for that reason, I think at the end of the day, they're not going to do it. Yeah. I think at the end of the day, there's just too much money in Izzy against Jan. There's too little money in Glover against Jan. And lastly, sorry, one last thing. Okay, there's too much money in Izzy against Jan. There's too little money in Jan against Glover. And third, Jan has no reason to want to fight Glover. There's so much more money as a champion if he fights Izzy. So why would he accept Glover, especially once he's already been offered Izzy and Izzy wants to fight? It makes no sense for him.
Now, here's the question. Maybe this could remedy the whole thing. How much money, I'm wondering, would the UFC have to put together to make maybe a non-title fight of Jones and Izzy at light heavyweight?
That's the thing.
I think that's a potential solution to this whole problem. Because both of them, it doesn't. None of this shit makes sense. But they would both dive on that opportunity. But no, just for the name recognition alone.
No, but Noah, like, how can you? I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me to see a guy have the belt for 10 years, decide, okay, you guys can take it, just to fight at that same weight class against a middleweight. Why not keep the belt and then fight the middle?
I have one very compelling reason.
To me, man.
One very compelling reason. Jones does not like Israel. And
yes,
he wants
but
to beat him up.
But he would say, get the belt. He wants the belt on. I don't think it makes sense for him to fight at 205 without the belt on the line.
That's why I think it's a tough outcome. I think the UFC would have to really fork up some fucking dough to make that happen.
I don't think it makes sense for them either.
But it solves their problem.
I don't think it makes sense for them either to have John Jones fight at 205 without the belt involved until he loses. I don't think it makes sense. Until John Jones loses the fight, he should not fight at 205 without the belt on the line.
I don't think it makes less sense than anything. I mean, no matter what, it's a John Jones fight. They know they're going to get. They can just say, "Fuck it." This is a 5-round fight for no reason at all of Jones versus Israel, and the winner gets the longest motherfucker belt.
No,
whoever wins gets the longest motherfucker belt. They can say whatever they want because it's going to sell.
But not at 205. I think if they do that, they do a catch weight.
They could do a catch weight.
I don't think they have.
I think a catch weight probably makes the most sense of like 220 or something.
I mean, I don't know if that necessarily makes sense because if anything, you would want to favor Izzy and go lower. But again, I don't know if John can go lower. It's just like in general, I just can't see John fighting at 205 pounds until he loses with a belt not involved. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
But can you think of another means that we can get the light heavyweight on the road without Israel jumping in and ruining things?
He's going to have to ruin things. And that's just what makes sense. And that's why he's saying he's been saying it a couple times. It's the biggest alley-oop the university ever gave him. It's a perfect setup for him to go and beat Jan and just drag John. And that's such a big thing. Oh, he's coming back against Izzy, who the guy, it's such a perfect situation.
It just seems like we're getting more into territory of what's the more interesting story, what's the most interesting cinematic moment versus what fights actually work. This makes sense.
No, it does make sense. First, I do think that the Izzy Jones fight makes sense, and I think
it makes sense. But I don't want it to be at the expense of the light heavyweight division.
So hold up for a second. This is what it is. This is Conor Khabib fucking over Tony Ferguson.
Yeah.
Okay, Glover Texiera is on a big winning streak, not anywhere to the same level as Tony. Hasn't been fucked to the same level as Tony. However, he's going to take the shorter end of the stick when you see this absolutely mega super fight that could be the biggest fight of the year. Absolutely, I think it would be. Whatever year it happens, if Conor doesn't fight on that card, it could be the biggest fight of the decade. For all we know, of the 2020s, Jones versus Izzy could be insanity.
When you put it that way, it seems pretty obvious what they're going to do.
Right. And so, it fucks over Glover Texiera, but it's the right thing for the UFC to do. And I can't even blame them because when you have that much money as a business on the line, you can't pick Glover over hundreds of millions of dollars.
Just feel bad for fucking Glover.
And it sucks. I mean,
at the end of the day, I don't care about Dana White making more money for himself. He's got enough. I want to see the fighters fight. But that exposure, that level of exposure of a fight that big helps everybody. It helps us. But that level of exposure helps all the fighters, right? You see all the fighters get more attention when there's more attention on the sport as a whole. Right.
Conor McGregor is a big reason that MMA is as big as it is today. Even though the attention was on him and Dana made all this money and the UFC made all this money, so did the other fighters. At the end of the day, they did. Right. Derive a lot of benefit from it.
Do you think that there's another fight that makes sense for Teixiera? If he has to, or do you think that he's just going to have to wait?
Yes, actually. So this is something I put in the notes in the news section, but we can bring it up right now. Dominic Reyes was recently booked against Yuri Prohaska. Now, Reyes, we all know, had that really, really close loss to John, where a lot of people thought he won, including myself. Then he had the real loss to Blachowicz, where he got knocked out. Yuri Prohaska, it was a champion in a few other organizations, made his debut in the UFC against Volkan Ozdemir and knocked him out cold. He slept Volkan Ozdemir. I know you saw that fight. I just don't know if you remember it.
I might not remember. I'd probably remember if you showed me the clip.
A total wild man, really, really strange way of striking, but he's insanely powerful. And if he can get by Dom Reyes with the background he has as a champion of other organizations and with 2 wins under the elite of the elite in the light heavyweight division, right? That's a good step up from Ozdemir to Reyes. He can potentially earn himself a title shot. And one thing we can maybe see is an interim belt with Yuri if he beats Dom against Glover, especially considering I believe that fight is booked for December. Might be the December 19th card or the December pay-per-view, one of the two.
All right. Well, that is a roadmap potentially. I could see that doing. That seems like it might not be my favorite outcome for old Tex, but I
think financially it is though, because he ends up getting the interim belt, which is a big fight. If he beats Prohaska, he now gets to fight the champion, whoever it is at the time, with pay-per-view points.
Yeah, I just don't know how much time he has left.
And it's going to be John and again, according to us, it'll be John or Izzy. So you're going to get to fight John or Izzy, assuming Izzy beats Jan, with pay-per-view points for you. I think actually, if anything, Tex wins everything then, because he might not beat Izzy, he will not beat Izzy in my opinion, but it doesn't matter because you're coming away with millions and you can retire happy. Fair. All right, let's move on. We have beaten this conversation absolutely dead.
Yeah.
We've squeezed out every drop of juice we can get from it. Let's move on to the co-main event. Andrei Arlovski with a win over Tanner Boser. And
Tanner the Hoser Boser.
Man, that was basically Ngannou versus Lewis, if you ask me. That fight did not move. That fight.
No, that was.
Boser went for leg kicks. Andrei sometimes countered with the hands. He hit Boser in the head and stumbled him like once around.
Yeah.
Hit like 3 leg kicks around, and that was
very hard shots, but not very active. A lot of circling. Yeah, real shame. I was really excited for Boser because I really like to see a very fast, crafty heavyweight
with footwork. That footwork is so nice.
Excellent, very very fun to watch. But it just seemed like he was really respected Arlovski and the power that he was bringing to the table. There's also probably the situation of you watch this guy fighting growing up, and they are potentially like a strong influence to you, and it kind of impacts the way that you fight against them inside of there. But it really just seems like Boser was really nervous to pull the trigger. I don't think he was confident that he could knock out Arlovski, but I think that he was confident that Arlovski could knock him out. So I think that he tried to coast by on points, and it led to a really boring fight altogether for everyone. So yeah,
I think this is one of those things that you're just going to get at heavyweight sometimes, because everyone has such big power that sometimes you get 2 counter fighters, or sometimes you get 2 guys who just have so much respect for one another's power, and maybe are coming off a weird time in the gym or a weird injury like we had in the Ngannou Lewis fight, where they might not have that same level of aggression or want to take that same risk, and they just end up waiting for someone to take the risk, and no one does, and we end up getting what we got last night. I think it's just inevitable. It'll happen occasionally in the heavyweight division. It sucks. I also really thought this was a really kind of a lost opportunity for Tanner Boser. I think he had a chance against a former champion to really make a name for himself off a couple big wins. I think he could have knocked out Arlovski, if you're asking me honestly. I think he was faster. I think he had better footwork. I think I would have favored him if they had actually gone and clashed. But you can't blame these guys because you're not in there and you don't know what they're feeling.
Yeah, I think we've seen enough, and like you said, we've seen enough heavyweight fights go this way that there's clearly, you get in there, you feel someone out, you get a taste for their power, and you realize that if you're going to win, you got to do it smart, because you could put on a good show and potentially lose a couple of years off of your life, and who are we to judge someone for making that call in the moment? It's a tough sport, and especially when you're fighting, things don't always go exactly as you plan. Things happen in a flash and it changes everything. Everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the face.
Mike Tyson.
So so this is a perfect example of that, and it is what it is. I don't have a remarkable amount else to say about this fight other than
So, what I was going to say actually is that, one of the reasons that you might see this fight might not have been actually quite as entertaining, might have been because it came off the heels of what ended up being the absolute fight of the night. Yeah. That fight was absolutely fucked. Barcelos against Taha. Barcelos is on animal. The man is a savage.
Oh my God.
The striking, the boxing is unbelievable. He had hard knees. There
were several times, man, where he entered like a flow state And it was like he was just like looking at the code in the Matrix.
No,
and just
dude, you know what it looked like?
Reading
it looked like he was
everything
hitting a
ahead of time.
punching bag. It looked like he was shadow boxing, just boom, 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 punching bag, duck, hit the punching bag some more. And the other guy, but the punching bag was trying to hit back and it wasn't working.
Yep. It was like he was just running, like a circuit in the gym that he'd worked on time and time again and just knew every movement he had to make, and it hit perfectly. It was so entertaining to watch that kind of high-level striking. Yeah.
Like he knows what's going to come next. He knows what to strike. It times perfectly. It just all works, man. And then he went, and then in the third round, he tried to take him down. He almost choked him out. So he clearly has some good BJJ as well. I think he should have stayed on the feet. I think fight IQ wise, he would have won if he had stayed. He would have knocked him out, I think, if he had stayed on the feet. But at the same time, I think that he wanted to show a little bit more of his diversity.
Yeah, test himself as well,
But man, Taha, credit to Taha to be able to put up with that amount of punishment and fight back. At no point did Taha give up. Yes, he was taking huge shots, getting beaten up, but he was swinging back, and he never once looked like he had no chance because he had some haymakers and he hit a couple.
Yeah, he was hitting. When he hit hard, and it was scary. It was scary, that one. I can't remember. There was some fight that night. I think I made the comment. And then some son of a bitch, probably Dominic Cruz or something, made the same comment afterwards. I can't remember if it was that fight, but the knockout sounded like a fucking baseball hitting a baseball.
Oh, there's no knockout in this fight. So that was
a different one I'm thinking
of. Well, actually, let's talk about that fight. That's the next fight we wanted to talk about. So Giga Chikadze knocked out Jamie Sivan. Now Giga Chikadze is a very, very well-known kickboxer, or was a pretty well-known kickboxer outside the UFC. I believe in Glory. Comes into the UFC. He was 4-0 coming into this fight. However, he was outpointing everybody. He was beating everyone up. He was breaking their nose, blooding them up, but they weren't ever. He wasn't able to finish.
He wasn't getting the finish. Yeah.
In this fight, he was putting it on Jamie Sivan. What was amazing at the end there, what he did, he had a huge hard shot to the body. It was a front kick, and you saw it crumpled Jamie. And the next shot, it was a question mark kick. It started looking like it was coming up to the body, and then whipped up and hit the head. And that's why it hit him so hard.
Kind of took the same direction as
Biden's
vote count. Just going up and then
go low.
Fake the old Biden try question mark kick.
Go mid so that they're thinking that you're going low, and then go high. Yeah. Beat them at the last second and crumble them to the ground, and
perfect.
Maybe they'll lose their job as a result.
I'm rewatching that KO again. God damn,
it's
brutal.
So hard,
like I said, sounded like a baseball hitting a baseball bat. One of the benefits of having no crowd in there, you get to really experience those shots.
Brutal. And so Giga Chikadze after that, so as we said, he's now 5-0 in the UFC. He's had some really big wins against a lot of maybe not huge names, but guys that are known as good fighters. So he beat Omar Morales in his previous fight, Erwin Rivera. He had a split decision over Jamal Emmers. So he has a bunch of good, solid wins. It's now time that he definitely deserves now a shot at a top 15 fighter. He's
no doubt
on a 5-fight winning streak in the UFC featherweight division, a very, very, very good division. So I think he called out Jeremy Stevens, and that's a fun fight. I think Jeremy Stevens is not going to try to take him down. I think that's why Kiko wants him. And by the way, that was his downfall earlier on. He clearly has much better takedown defense than he did when he entered the UFC, which is not something you would expect out of a kickboxer to improve their takedown defense if they want to continue to win, which means that the UFC has built him up correctly, giving them those smaller guys that he can beat, but force him to learn to stop takedowns before he faces off against those top 15. And now I think we're ready to feed him to the wolves and ramp him up in real competition.
Well, let's see. That's a fighter that I am highly interested in following their trajectory. Very, very impressive knockout.
So yes, Giga Chikadze out of Georgia.
Giga or Giga? I don't know.
I think it's Giga. I'm pretty sure it's Giga. Chikadze.
Yeah, well, we'll call him up sometime. We'll take some callers sometime.
I have a feeling that by the end of 2021, most people will know how to say his name.
Okay, wow, that's a bold claim. Let's see.
I think he'll be a top 10 guy. I don't know if he's going to be a top 5 guy. I think he'll be top 10, and he'll settle around there. We'll see where he goes.
Let's wait and see.
Are there any other things we want to mention? There was one other thing that we did want to mention, and that was maybe not a loss of hearing, but a loss of ear. We had one of the nastier cut that
one of the more brutal, probably. Well, if I'm thinking cuts, was that the most brutal in-cut injury we've seen since Overeem's lip?
Oh, maybe since Overeem's lip. Yeah. So Max Griffin had a huge right hand over Ramiz Brahimaj, and Brahimaj's ear, there's a big cut over here such that the top part was almost hanging off, and then he made dangling. It worse with a hard elbow in the clinch, and you can see it was dangling by a thread. Yeah. The referee saw it, called it off. Didn't have to even consider calling a doctor. Yeah. There's no question. The man didn't have. Oh my God!
You need surgery right away.
Oh, fucking disgusting.
I recommend that everybody go, and if you're feeling like you got a strong stomach, go look at the image of that.
Did you see the Dana?
It's brutal. It's as brutal as it comes.
Actually, so I realized I had a thought. They are still marketing this a bit as a blood and guts and gore kind of sport, because Dana White took the picture of his ear falling off and posted it on Facebook with the caption, UFC prelims right now on ESPN Plus, and he had that ear fall. So it had, of course, it had the warning thing, of course, but man, I mean, I guess that is the thing that first brings a lot of people in. It is that blood and guts.
Let's be honest. I love the human chess match, but at the same time,
it adds
love the blood, love the gore, love the violence. That's all. It's all part of it.
I think the stakes, the high stakes, make the chess match even more compelling. Mm-hmm. It's like, all right, he lost chess, so he lost the game. No. He lost chess, and he's not conscious for a couple minutes.
Yeah.
His ear fell off. He crumpled because his insides feel like they're gonna it's bad.
It adds some stakes to the competition, but I have not seen something like that before. Losing almost the whole ear. That's what fighting's all about. It was brutal.
Let's move on into some news. So we didn't have a huge, crazy news week. A lot of what the news was kind of that Israel drama we kind of discussed already. But something that we didn't discuss, this actually happened a few weeks ago, but we didn't discuss in the podcast. So I sent you guys a video. I don't know if you watched it. Francis Ngannou's coach, or former coach now, Fernando Lopez, had a big interview with I forget the guy's name. I'm really sorry. I am a couple of the Irish. The guy's an Irish commentator or a journalist. Really, really tough, good guy. I really like him. Regardless,
beats me.
Yeah. Regardless, Fernando Lopez was talking about how Ngannou seems to have a really major ego problem, as we saw in the Stipe fight, that hasn't been solved at all. Fernando's known as a really, really good top-level coach. He's very, very reputable. He's not a guy who fucks around and is just like a Diego Sanchez coach kind of guy who's just like all talk and no walk. This guy has trained some top-level guys. If you listen to him, and he's right, never once have I ever heard Francis Ngannou in any post-fight interview, in any reward interview, in any time that he ever had a chance to thank people, did he ever mention his team or his coaches? Not once. He thanks the fans. And he's like, he thanks the family maybe. He does not thank his team and his coaches. Apparently he doesn't listen very much in the gym. He does what he wants. Apparently he's not a coachable athlete. And for that reason, they have gone their separate ways. They have some beef now, apparently.
Oh, that's a shame. Well, I will say, some people have different personal styles. Some people need closer guidance. Some people want that level of guidance. Some people are like Mike Perry. They just want their girlfriend at the octagon side to just say, "Good job, honey. You're doing great." So some people, I don't like that term uncoachable. Maybe he thrives more on on his own regimen and knows. But I think that there's also an element of Francis goes in there. When he wins on his own terms, doing what he does best. And I think that, maybe there's a possibility that he's seeing that some of the skills that the coaches are telling him to apply in the gym, maybe his thoughts are, well, I don't even need to do this. But I am winning so easily without even needing any of this. Why am I paying these guys? which is obviously a mistake, which you'd see, if you watch like his Stipe
bite him
fight.
In the ass, dude. It's gonna bite him in the ass again.
The problem is it's taken him so far to the point where he is like all but the champion. Problem is with the current champion right now, I've been saying, I still don't see him beating Stipe. I mean, like I know Stipe doesn't maybe have the same chin that he did back when Ngannou and him fought the first time, but like I think that especially if Ngannou isn't taking that kind of collaborative preparation for that fight seriously, I think that Stipe is going to figure out, a way to avoid his worst shots as he did, the first time as the fight kind of went on, and then he's still going to be able to tag Stipe and fucking take him down and wrestle him.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't actually think Stipe will be able to survive an Ngannou fight, regardless of whether or not Ngannou has improved. I think it's just been too long. He's taking too much damage in the interim, and I think Ngannou still hurts so hard. But
if that's the case, then I mean, then maybe Ngannou is right.
No, so but here's the thing. Okay, so this is the second part of my point, is that even though he might beat Stipe, who is not prime Stipe, he might beat a lot of the guys and he is winning. It's just not going to be sustainable. That's not to say he won't become champion. That's not to say he won't have a couple title defenses. Mm-hmm. But he's not going to be. He's always going to be a threat. But I think eventually he's going to get figured out. Eventually, people are going to start wrestling him. Eventually, they're going to figure out what to do. And I think a lot of the time, a lot of these big wrestlers just haven't had the chance to wrestle him. And of course, there has been the Curtis Blades and the what's his name, Cain Velasquez incidents where these are wrestlers that weren't able to beat him. In the Curtis Blades incidents, he just kind of got lucky and clipped him. Cain, kind of similar thing.
I wouldn't even call it getting lucky at that point, because that's just what he does and it works every time.
It's just one of these days, the guy is not going to go out and not going to go down that easily, like what happened with Stipe, and he's going to grind him out. I can even I don't say a favor, but I can see Blades beating him in a trilogy. Not that Blades deserves it over him right now, but I think that it could happen.
That happens. Well,
it could happen. I don't know.
I think I agree. I agree with you. But even if his like current mentality with regards to his like independent nature with training, if that leads him to even a single, like if he gets the title and wins even a single defense, I mean, that's better than most people end up doing with their careers ever. So then arguably he is making the right decision.
No, but look at the potential
in some respects.
Well, no, because I think he has, when you have a guy as talented as him, I think he's doing it despite not being necessarily coachable, or not as coachable as you might hope he would be. But I think that if he was as coachable and he was able to become the prime, if he's able to really unlock the potential of what a man with his physical gifts and pure fighting ability have to offer in the grappling and everything else, I think he'd be something else. And I think I think
we're talking about an entire mentality change, because ultimately he'd like, with his mentality right now, it seems like just working with these coaches is not helping. So I have
a hunch of what's going on here. I think a big part of it, Francis didn't come into MMA. He didn't want to ever be an MMA fighter. Mm-hmm. What did he want to be? A boxer. He never wanted to fight MMA, and he's been talking about boxing still. He still talks about it. I don't think he wants to stay in MMA much longer after he wins the belt. I think what might be happening here is he wants to win a couple belts and leverage that for a couple big boxing fights and become a boxer. Mm-hmm. And that way, and for that reason, he doesn't have to work the takedowns. He doesn't give a shit.
Yeah.
I think he's going to realize when he goes into boxing, when he loses those leg kicks and when he has that big of a differential in the ability, he might beat some good boxers, but he's not a top elite boxer by any means.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's fair. Fair to say. I don't know. This feels very weird because I mean, we have he's got a great personality. I think he has a side to this story that we're not hearing. Obviously, I think that there's clearly some beef behind the scenes, and I'm sure that, I wouldn't want to make a full, I certainly wouldn't want to say anything baseless about Ngannou without getting his perspective on this incident. So, I mean, who's to say what exactly the situation is with Ngannou?
Yeah, I just want to say very quickly, I just remembered the guy's name who interviewed him. His name is Pete C. Carroll. For anybody watching, give him full credit. He deserves. It's actually got like 200,000 views on YouTube, so he's getting the credit he deserves. But always want to reference him. Let's move on. We had quite a big election, and everybody's favorite candidate won the election. And no, I am not talking about the presidential election. No, forget that noise.
A much more important election.
Much more. Tito Ortiz has won a seat on the Huntington Beach City Council.
Woo!
Under, of course, the slogan, "Make Huntington Beach Safe again."
4 more years. 4 more years. Let's go. Tito Ortiz, my favorite politician of the year. What can we even say that hasn't already been said?
I mean, let me tell you how you feel right now.
Let me tell you how I'm feeling right now. I'm feeling confused because who in their right mind would have voted for that man? I mean, come on. He can't string a goddamn sentence together. There's nothing I can say that hasn't already been said about Tito, like without treading the old water. So that's all the news is. Tito Ortiz is a fucking politician. Enjoy that, everybody. Enjoy that into 2021.
Exactly. Tito Ortiz 2021. Oh my gosh.
Don't you have to take some kind of a cognitive test, right? Shouldn't you be able to like read? I don't know.
Let me just tell you, there never was no test.
Never was no test. God damn it. How? Okay. You know what? We got to stop because I'm going to fucking just, all I'm going to be able to say is how over and over and over again. And I have nothing else to add.
We have a couple more pieces of news and nothing too crazy this week. We were actually just talking about Curtis Blaydes. On that note, Curtis Blaydes did just book a fight, what long rumored. It is now official against Derek the Black Beast Lewis. And what we're going to see is exactly what we expect. Blaydes taking him down, Lewis trying to knock him out in the feet. And the question is, can the legendary just get up technique of Derek Lewis work against the elite level wrestling of Curtis Blaydes?
Yes.
What do you think? Yes.
Derek Lewis gives me no reason to doubt his ability to beat a takedown artist. But don't forget, because the UFC won't let you forget, that Curtis Blaydes has the strongest takedown pressure in the entire UFC.
Harder than an NFL hit.
My God, the little clip of him just like storming into like the punching bag and just falling flat on top of it is one of the funniest things that they show continuously.
Dude, I love it. You know what line has literally burned a hole in my fucking brain? Kevin was only 9 years old. He says, "Mom, I'm going to be famous one day." And
that's what he did. See, for me, you know what's stuck in my head, because I think it sounds more and more stupid every time I hear it, is Adesanya going like, he ends his little thing with, "and it's mind-blowing." Every time I hear that, I'm like, that was an unnecessary extra comment.
To be fair, I think it was probably edited in from another comment.
Probably was. This is the guy. This is the GOAT. And it's mind-blowing. I hate that little
No, this is as real as it gets.
This is real as it gets.
And it's mind-blowing.
That's implied. Dude, Fuck you. God, I hate. All right. Why don't they change this shit up? Can we talk about that? Wait.
Yeah. Petition to the millions of listeners that we have out there on the show. We want you guys to sign a petition. We're going to have ESPN or whatever streaming sites that we may or may not use. We would like them.
Definitely may not.
Definitely may not. To stop with these same 4 commercials in the same 4 order with the same fucking music.
My God, it's annoying. Now they've got this is what I pay to see, baby. This right here. Oh my God, I know all of them, and so do you.
Mind blowing.
Oh my fucking God. Bad. Somebody's got to just like make a big long clip editing them all together for some like, I don't know, some YouTube poop funny shit. Edit all of those UFC commercials together.
Yeah, they did, and they play them in between every fucking commercial break.
And no one needs to do that for YouTube. And I love it.
All right.
Mishmash.
Last but not least, if we want to go, I can't believe we're stooping this low. I don't know why you wrote this in the notes, Noah. We're stooping.
We
to
talked about
Diego
Tito
Sanchez.
Ortiz being a politician.
Okay,
we didn't talk about
Diego
anything.
Sanchez is on Twitter. You want to bring this up, and he asked Damian Maia for a Legends fight. Now, I have way too much respect for Damian Maia to see him go out by choking out Diego Sanchez, or at this point in Diego's career. But if they want to do it,
yep. Damian said yes. Damian said yes. He agreed.
Look, I'd rather this than feeding Damian to Khamzat. So I can't really complain.
And I'd prefer this to feeding Diego to a knockout artist.
Yeah, you're right.
So,
and from that perspective,
why not?
But are they going to give Diego another fight? And should they? I think they shouldn't.
No, they absolutely fucking shouldn't. But I feel like they're weighing their options here. Because if they don't give Diego another fight, I don't know. What's he going to do to himself? Where's he going to go? I think his life gets so much worse as soon as he's not fighting.
That's true. But I can see him going to Bellator, to be honest. I can see him just not stopping the fight. I can see him just fighting whoever takes him and going BKFC for all we know. Fuck. Yeah.
He could become a big steroid monster. That could be the next.
Oh, I'd watch Diego steroid.
I'd be okay with that. Crazy.
I'd watch Diego steroid Sanchez.
Monstrous, just like looking like fucking squanchy after he drinks his little tooth serum
in ONE FC or some shit.
Yeah, that's nice. I think that the only real outcome we have left for Diego Sanchez, because any other outcome I can think of is too frightening and horrifying to even think about. So good luck, Diego.
And let's move on to some good fights. Yeah, so some good fights. Next week we have coming up Islam Makachev taking on Rafael Dos Anjos RDA. They were supposed to fight on the Khabib card just a few weeks ago. RDA got COVID, but Islam is getting the fight he deserves. He has been campaigning for a while. He hasn't fought in a long time. The man's 18-1. He's undefeated, I believe, in the UFC. I'm not fully sure. I think he's undefeated in the UFC. I might be wrong there.
I'll take a look for you.
But regardless, he's on a big fight winning streak, and he is being sold at least from the AKA.
He is not undefeated in the UFC. He lost to Adriano Martins.
Okay, so he won an early fight in his career, but
that was a while ago, though.
Quite a while ago, and he's being sold. He's being sold as AKA as the future Khabib, with striking, of course, as well. So it'll be really, really interesting to see. This is a good step up for him. I think he is favored, and he should be favored to win here. RDA has not necessarily looked amazing at welterweight or at lightweight, but I think
talking about doesn't look amazing. You see that man's mustache in his pictures? It's looking like a fucking model.
Or his fighting doesn't look amazing, but he
looks like a model of masculinity.
I think Makachev has the right mix of striking and grappling to take on RDA. I think it's a good matchup for him. I think it's going to launch him into that top 10. And I think his next top 10 fight might be against a guy like a Dan Hooker, like a that, or a Paul Felder, that kind of level of top 7-ish, top level names, but not quite top 3, top 4.
Well, let's see. Let's give him some more time to develop in there and increase his
resume. If he has a good win, I can see. I want to see him against Michael Chandler.
Actually, yeah, that would be a good one. That'd be a good one. I'll tell you, I don't really know much about Michael Chandler. I think that a lot of people are in that same boat, just seeing him as like unless you're like really in promoted the news behind the scenes, he just seems like a random dude they're hyping up and promoting. But God, like he's not UFC championship quality. Straight the fuck up. Just gonna say that and move on.
I think he's around top 10. He's top 10. He's top 10. Maybe top 5. I just don't think he's a 155-pound champion.
No, absolutely.
Additional good fights though to see on this card. Abdul Razak Al Hassan. He's coming off a loss, but it was a very, very good fight. And Abdul Razak Al Hassan is one of the scariest motherfuckers in that welterweight division. The man throws bombs. He looks like a bodybuilder. He's one of the scariest physicalities I've seen at welterweight. And we're talking about a division with Tyron Woodley and Kamaru Usman in it, right? Abdul Razak Al Hassan is a monster. And he's fighting on Calvin Williams, who's 10-1. So it's another good fighter, young, just 26 years old, making his way up. I think it's a really exciting co-main event that'll hype us up for Islam versus RDA.
Right on. I'm excited for that one.
I'm
going to throw out my favorite name of the week for these fights. We've got Eric Anders, which makes me think of Eric Andre. So that's a
Eric
solid
Anders
one.
He has a bunch of fights. He's been around for a while.
Let's see. Oh, we're getting Reese McKee back in the.
So Reese McKee is
back in the octagon.
Was the second victim of Khamzat Chimaev. He was supposed to be a very highly touted prospect. He was making his debut against Khamzat, and that's not fair to anybody to have to debut against Khamzat. So they're giving him a real fight. He of course didn't get cut off that fight, and I'm really curious to see how good he is. And I'm almost looking at this as how good is Khamzat based on what he did to Reese. Let's see how good Reese is, and it'll tell us how good Khamzat is.
That's a good metric right there to look at. What I'm thinking here as well is we got Ronda Marcos fighting again. Didn't she just fight? I feel like I saw her fight like a week ago.
She fights every night, man.
She lost.
She lost.
Why is she fighting again?
I think
God, it just feels weird looking at her. She's fighing. She's got 10-1 versus someone who's 11-1.
Yeah, I hate it.
Not a knockout. God, she's never been knocked out, actually, to be fair.
That's the thing, right? She's getting submitted by everybody, and so she can take more fights. And I don't know. I just don't know why. She seems to split wins and losses. She has first, I think, back-to-back losses last time. So first 2-fight winning streak. I think she might be fighting for her contract in this fight. It's possible.
I think that makes sense to me. If she ends up coming into let's say she loses this fight, that means she's coming into whatever next at 10-11. That's not okay at that point. No, that's absolutely not okay. You need to work on your game and maybe spend some more time in some other divisions.
Yep. I think you're right.
In some other organizations. Looking at other names, other names
Kay
that
Hansen's
jump out
on this card. Kay Hansen won it. It was a very.
I'm thinking of funny names.
Who Kay I actually find is they're missing the T there. It's Katie, but all right. But Kay Hansen. She won on Dana White's Contender Series this season. There's a lot of hype behind her. She had a really good win. I believe she was a really good on the feet. She's a very good striker. So bringing her in is always exciting. It's always nice to see these Contender Series alums come into the UFC, make their debut, and see just how good of a feeder Contender Series is. So that'll be a good metric to see.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
There's one other fight I was looking at actually. Which one was it? I'm sorry. Oh yeah, that was Danny Rodriguez against Brian Barberena that unfortunately just got scrapped. Barberena had emergency surgery. He had some sort of internal bleeding issue, which is very unfortunate. I was really hyped up for that fight. But it is what it is.
The best to him.
Other than that, it's a pretty standard fight night card. Nothing too special. A couple names sprinkled in here and there. A couple good prospects here and there.
There's a shit ton of fights.
There are a lot of fights on there.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 fights. It strikes me as a lot.
Yeah, so there's not too much to talk about this week. However, stay tuned, everybody, for next week, because next week we have a pay-per-view preview show. We will have the Davison Figueiredo against Alex Perez, as well as Valentina
Very exciting fight
against Jennifer Maia. Double header. 2 titles will be on the line that night.
Two very exciting title fights.
So please stay tuned. Next Sunday we will be back. Until then, as always, like, comment, subscribe. Listen to us on Spotify, on Google Podcasts, anything else. Noah, do you have any last closing statements to make?
Just to address maybe the elephant in the room, Adam was not here today, could not join us. He was busy with the prior engagement. He'll be back next time. Don't you worry about that.
Oh, you guys don't worry. We will have Adam back in our lives and in your lives as well. Until then, for Noah, I am Roie, and we will see you guys next week.
Bye-bye.